All of you, I know, might be surprised, but there should be no surprise because I've never walked away from anything in my life. And I just felt there was an opportunity here to really give us an energy policy with security that we need for our nation, but also driving down the prices. The high price of gasoline, driving down inflation was my number one goal. And that's what we worked on. So we have an Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, which basically pays down the deficit for the first time, $300 billion towards deficit. Energy security and climate, truly where we have two paths. We have a robust energy for our fossils, so we have a clear pathway that we can basically compete, be energy independent, not depending on foreign nations for our energy supplies that we need right now, and being able to backfill our allies around the world, especially in Europe, with this cleanest fossil energy in the world. And that's decarbonizing also, while we also make a tremendous investment in the future of energy for our country and the world. So I think that we've hit a balance. This is not a Democrat bill. This is not a Republican bill. This is an American bill. And this was a driving force of what we did and why we did what we did. How this all came to fruition is basically no one in their right mind would go through all the protest harassments, if you will, that happened to me over after the Build Back Better was defeated, which I thought was a bill that was too much for America. There was something that would change us, and I was not in support. And with that, but I thought there are things that needed to be done. And it's about April, I started working with my staff. We started talking, is there a feasible way to do some things that are reasonable? And Build Back Better is dead as we know it. People kept trying to revive that or keep it alive. But what we did, we still had contact with the White House, working back and forth and talking on different types of things. So that was always amicable. But then Senator Schumer, myself started speaking. And I said, Chuck, the one thing that we can do today, tomorrow, anytime, is the reduction of the Medicare drug prices. We know that Medicare is very supportive, been supportive across the country to let them negotiate to reduce the prices of high drugs, and also the high cost of Affordable Care Act right now with inflation. If we could extend that for a few years, which we did. And my main concern was inflation. I was worried about inflation from being a driving point because it's harming every West Virginian. I hear about it every day. And high price of gas, high price of food, high price of energy, high price of everything they need. So we kept working and working and working hard on that. And then we got to a point to where I thought we were moving in the right direction. And all of a sudden, the 9.1% of inflation rates came out. And on a Thursday, I said, Chuck, with these new inflation rates, and now I'm not comfortable with moving forward until we really look at and see what's going on with inflation. So the month of July will come back. But whatever we do, we can't do anything that it will inflame inflation, make it worse. When got a little bit hot and heated, if you will, but that's the way negotiations go. And he says, well, if you're not going to do that, we'll just do the one thing. And then all hell broke loose Thursday night, people thinking I walked away and done this and that, or I'm reversed my position. I've never been in reverse in my lifetime, and I never walked away. So over the weekend, by Monday, we ran into each other again. We ran into each other again. I said, you still upset? And he said, I'm very discouraged. I said, well, you shouldn't be. I said, something positive could be done if we all want to work rationally. I said, we just can't do anything inflammatory. So the things we were working on before, we started restructuring that over the weekend and started on Tuesday, I think, in earnest a couple of weeks ago, trying to see if there was a different approach we could take. And we did that. We don't raise taxes on anybody. And anybody that says we're raising taxes by putting a minimum of 15% corporate tax on corporations, largest corporations of $1 billion of book value or greater, that's going to be inflammatory. I don't think many of us can figure out why, when we reduced it from 35 to 21 in 2017, when that tax cut was cut by 14%, that people weren't paying at least 15% or supposedly paying 21. So if someone's upset, they weren't paying anything, please come forward and tell us why you were able to have this great country protect you and give you these opportunities. You don't have to pay anything into it. Didn't think that was fair. That's the only that's the only tax that we really changed. We got rid of carried interest, which needed to be gotten rid of for many, many years, which only benefited extremely wealthy. And then on top of that, we were able to get IRS to where they can do their job without harassing people and going after small people, but just do their job. And we're hoping we can get them computerized and do it much more efficiently. And so those are the things we did. And now we have a two-path in energy security. You have to be energy secure. You have to be energy independent if you want to be a superpower in the world. That's what China does, and that's what Russia has had. And there are two nemesis right now, both large nuclear adversaries of ours. And with that, Putin weaponized energy like no other time I've ever seen, but used it as a weapon. I think Xi Jinping will do the same with rare earth minerals. And I believe that we have to be able to defend ourselves by being independent and having a robust fossil industry, streamline our permitting processes so we can get into the game quick, whether it's to build out more transmission and more pipelines, or whether it's to build out basically what's needed for our new transition of clean technology. So we can walk and chew gum, I think, and basically benefit and help the world immensely, but also keep America strong and protected. That's how we got to where we are. So I'm happy to open up for questions. And if you want to start, I'm happy to be able to take those questions.
Okay, first we'll go with Kenny Bass with WCHS. Kenny?
Thank you, Marcus. And Senator, I hope you're feeling better. I had COVID a couple of weeks ago. It was no picnic, but certainly hope you're on the road to recover back to normal soon.
Thank you, Kenny. I am.
West Virginia, as you well know, is not a big supporter of President Biden and his agenda. It's a pretty red state. Obviously, you've done very well here over the years as a Democrat. So given the trap between the two polarizations, so to speak, where you have to work with the Democratic Party, but you have to serve your constituents, where does this deal help West Virginia specifically? And how can you answer critics who will say, when you do a deal like this, it also aids the Biden administration, but does helping us overall trump any assistance you might give to the president?
Well, first of all, the best politics is good government. Let's do something for the country. This is not being Democrat. This is not being Republican. I didn't do anything to help either side because I know they're so dug in. And that's what basically people hate about the political process we have today, that when something good, and basically people will hold that as a hostage. The Democrats did it with over in the House with the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is a great piece of legislation, Kenny. They held that hostage. Okay. The Republicans now are basically helping the veterans hostage because they're mad. This is wrong. This would be a bill that, sure, this would have been a bipartisan bill, but we had to have revenue in order to make sure that energy security, that we had money that's going to give incentives for carbon capture sequestration so we continue to use fossil. This is a bill that keeps the fossil industry and keeps the country in a very strong position until those new technologies, whenever that may be, 10, 20 years from now, they're able to kick in. And that transition will happen when whatever you have that you're using, you've got something better to replace it with and can do just as well, if not better, cheaper prices. The market takes over. I just could not absolutely anyway agree that this aspirational of getting rid of everything, eliminate, isn't going to work at all. And I was never for that. And I didn't think they'd ever come around till we could finally understand Putin is using weapons. We got now Europe basically saying, well, I hope that Ukraine can go ahead and make a deal now after they've been annihilated. Well, Ukraine should fight now until the bitter end, and we should be helping them until the bitter end and making sure they defeat. You can only do that if you have the energy to backfill Europe, keep Europe off their back. We got to make sure that Xi Jinping doesn't start doing the same thing as we go down the path of electric vehicles, Kenny. Well, we never in our history, the United States of America has been the leader in the transportation mode forever, whether it's be airplanes, trains, cars, or whatever. We've done everything in America. Now, all of a sudden, we want to transition into electric vehicles, which we have no ability at all to be self-contained. We can't. And I said, that's crazy. So we're changing that too. Okay, that's what's changing. This is a bill that will knock down inflation, should knock down gas prices, should knock down basically high costs across the board. And I think it's going to help West Virginians immensely, and it'll help Americans if they'll just look at the contents of the bill. We're getting permitting reform. How many times have you heard you can't build anything in America? It takes you 10 years to get a permit. There's no reason that we should have any longer than 2 years in a permitting process. And we're streamlining some of these permits right now where we have projects ready to go, whether it be pipelines or whatever, that we can start moving this energy that we need immediately to help ourselves and help our allies. This is all part of it. Permitting reform, doing that, investment in clean technology. This is a bipartisan bill. When you say bipartisan, that it's an all-in energy policy, all of the above, using everything we have to the best of our advantage today. If we don't do that, God help us. And on top of that, we put $300 billion to reducing the debt, definite reduction. We haven't done that in my lifetime that I can recall. And on top of that, we're reducing drug prices for Americans across the board in Medicare. So I think it's a win-win here, but people are all getting hyped up. Okay, it might help the Democrats. So I'm a Republican, I gotta be against it. Come on, guys, we're Americans. Look at the bill. If it's a good bill, it's a Democrat and Republican bill. We just only had one process of reconciliation. It's the only vehicle I had to use. Okay, thanks, Kenny.
All right, thank you, Kenny. Next, we'll go to Frank Thorpe with NBC News.
Hi, Senator. You've got Frank and Allie here from NBC. We're glad that you're starting to feel better. I have two questions.
I'm sure I don't look any better, Allie, but I'm feeling better.
We got two questions for you. The first is, have you spoken to Senator Kyrsten Sinema on this? And the second is, many people are looking at this, the timing of it. Did you guys pull a fast one on Republicans after the CHIPS vote had passed, then announcing your deal?
No, I sure hope they don't feel that way. I mean, I understand that they are, but I don't know why, because here's the thing. First of all, with Kyrsten, I have not spoken to her about this. They all knew that I was, Joe, you doing anything? You trying to find something? Our people were working intensely. Our people wrote the bill, wrote the contents. That's the text. That's why everything was ready last night. I mean, we worked with Schumer staff. They were very constructive. Everybody give and take a little bit. And the White House they were basically kept apprised of what was going on to a certain extent. And it was just something that we just had to see if it could work. I wasn't sure it was going to work. And then by Monday, I'm isolated. I test with COVID, so I had to leave. And then things started moving a little differently. I'm on the phone and we're moving things through. But with Kyrsten, I have not, but I would hope that she would be receptive, because, she fought like the Dickens to keep taxes from going up, and there's no tax increases except the 15% minimum. And I think you just heard me tell Kenny, I don't know how anyone could be opposed when we think they should be paying 21. That's the law, but they were paying nothing, or maybe those ones. So I said, come forth, let me know how you were, first of all, not paying any taxes, and next of all, how we've hurt you, because we sure didn't intend to. So we didn't raise taxes, so she should be happy with that. And the way the drug negotiation went, those were basically things that she had worked out. So I was very receptive to that. And the only thing I was adamant about is the carried interest. Enough's enough for the 0.1% of the wealthiest people in the country having an advantage. So I'm hoping everybody's okay.
That's something that she has drawn a line on in the past, saying that she does not want to see that carried interest loophole closed. That's in the bill right now. Is that a concern? Or are you prepared to lose it if you need to keep?
I'm not prepared to lose. No. I've worked. When I'm saying not prepared, what we have is a good bill that's fair with everybody. It's a give and take proposition. And you always have that give and take price. It's not my way or the highway, but my goodness, on scenarios like that, how can and I think the people that have benefited from carried interest for years and years and years knew that they had a good run. It was long overdue to get rid of it, and you couldn't justify it anymore. You really couldn't. Because how in the world can you take advantage of someone who has their capital at risk, has their money at risk, and all you do is have your time involved, and you're going to get the same benefits they do for the risk they're going to get my commissions and get the same benefit. None of that makes sense. It really doesn't. So I'm hoping that she should be considered to that, and we'll see how it goes. But this is a good piece of legislation. This is not American or Republican. It's an American legislation. It really is. I didn't do it to help the Democratic Party, and I didn't do it to hurt the Republican Party. I did it because I think in normal times, both parties would have come together on something like this. I really do. Okay, thank you all.
All right, thank you, Frank and Allie. Next, we'll go to Jocelyn King with the Willing Intelligencer.
Yes, Senator, I'll echo the thoughts of the others, and I hope that you're feeling better today. I was in your shoes last week. Can you hear me okay?
I got you. Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. I see that this bill involves investing $300 billion in deficit reduction. I guess my question is, where does that $300 come from?
300 billion?
Toward the
300 billion, where'd it come from?
Yeah.
Okay, there's $739 billion in revenue in the bill. Okay. 400, I think about 400 billion came from the 15% minimum corporate tax. Okay, over a 10-year period. You had 288 billion came into over a 10-year period from the reduction, from allowing Medicare to negotiate, to save money and get lower drug prices. Another 120 billion, I believe, came from the IRS finally be able to get their computerization and their force up, their staff up to force, and do the job by not harassing people, just by collecting what's owed to the American Treasury. And then the carried interest is about 14 billion. So that's where the money came from. So 369 billion of it's going to be spent, invested, not spent, but invested in a robust fossil industry that we have with carbon capture, sequestration, all the incentives that we knew that we need to produce our energy much cleaner with incentives for technology. Excuse me for 1 second. Excuse me, Jocelyn. I had to get a call. I couldn't.
I know what you've gone through.
Oh boy, man, you got to hydrate all the time. Anyway, the 300 billion comes out of that total 739 that we've raised with that income, and then basically the investments we're making for fossil and for clean technology. And we just made a commitment that out of the 739, at least 300 billion of it had to go to debt reduction. The first time that I know that has been done, at any time in the future or in the past, but I think that sends a strong signal to the market that we're serious about the debt that we're carrying right now, which is far too large, and that we'll get our financial house in order, but we can have a robust economy also without putting a burden on anybody. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Next, we have Andy Durain with the Wall Street Journal.
Hi, Senator Manchin. It's good to hear that you're starting to feel better. I wanted to ask, you said that obviously you and your staff were scrubbing the bill to make sure that there weren't pieces in it that were inflationary and that maybe there were some tweaks. And so I'm curious what may have changed in the last week or so based on what you had reviewed in terms of inflation. And then in general, you also mentioned that there were maybe some additional revenue measures that you had been looking at that were also taken out of the bill. I'm just curious, what was changing in the last few weeks here.
Let me just say this, Andy. When everything stopped on that Thursday evening, when Chuck got a little upset with me, and but my staff never stopped. We never did. And I said, hey, I said, I'm not. I said, we're still going forward. We're still looking to see if there's a pathway. So basically, we took about $400 to $500 billion out of that in revenue that could have been looked at in different aspects of it, if you will. That could have been, I think, could have been deemed inflammatory. We ran it by all the financial experts that we work with, and saying that could be in some sort or another could be looked upon. It might be harmful, might be onerous to some people, and making sure that small businesses and individuals weren't affected at all. That's really how we got down to it. Once we got down to it and could live within the figure that we came up with, then that's when it was kind of moving forward. Okay. Up until then, it was a matter, I don't know if it can be done. I don't know if we can agree to this and that, but we kept it very quiet and kept talking. So, in all due respect for my Republicans, I told them, I says, if I can get a piece of legislation that gives us a balanced approach and we can reform permitting, which you've always been for, reforming permitting, saying it's too onerous, and we can do all these things and not be a burden on the taxpayers. Or the businesses, don't you think I should look and see if I could do that? So I thought they had an idea that I'm always looking to improve something or make something good happen. And that's really how it came about it.
I mean, and just, I mean, 400 to $500 billion in revenue, that's a lot of money. I guess I'm curious what some of those provisions were that were seen as too possibly
Well,
harmful.
let me just say this, they're not there anymore, okay? When we got down to it, and those weren't things we agreed upon, those things were being discussed. So rather than to identify something, and that was bad or this was bad, that was just a range of discussions of different things that could be. And if all these things could be, and it was 1.1 or 1.2, I thought, well, wait a minute now. And then when the 9.1 came out, it really put the brakes on for me to even be talking, even considering. So I think that's when we just worked through it and just kept looking at everything.
Thanks, Senator.
Okay.
Thank you, Andy. Next, we'll go to Curtis Tate with West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Curtis?
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. Hi, Senator. Glad to see you feeling better. I just wanted to ask you about the full permanent extension of the Black Lung Disability Trust Fund excise tax that's in this legislation. Can you tell us a little bit about how that helps a lot of people in West Virginia and Appalachia?
Well, first of all, there's an awful lot of people who've worked and energized this country for a long time that depend on that. And really, this debilitating disease of black lung has been absolutely horrendous on them and their families' lives. So it's something I've been committed to for a long time. I've tried to put legislation, tried to do everything I could. And this is a proper way to do this. And we did it, and it's in there. Doesn't harm. I said, my God, fossil prices are at record high right now. So hold on. Fossil prices are at record highs right now. It's not harming anybody whatsoever. And it's something we have an obligation, responsibility as a country to make sure that the people who provide the energy that kept this country what it is today, made us a superpower of the world, or at least we fulfill our promise to take care of them.
Yeah, thank you, Curtis. Next, we'll go to Manu Raju with CNN.
Hey, Senator, thanks for doing this. Can you, when the June
Easier on your legs, you'll chase me around the hallways.
Yes, indeed. When the June inflation numbers came out earlier this month, I mean, you were alarmed by those numbers, and
yeah.
This was what you said that these spending provisions just simply could inflame things, as you're saying. So, what exactly convinced you, and what evidence do you have that this bill would actually reduce inflation, and why do you think that spending this amount of money on climate and energy issues and raising taxes would actually reduce inflation?
Well, first of all, when negotiations started with my staff and informally with Schumer's, okay, back in April, people still were looking at they were still pretty concerned about what happened with BBB, and looking at me as a nemesis of that not taking effect. So there were still some concerns, and there were still some desires that people wanted, and everybody was coming, hey, how about this, how about that? So there's a lot of negotiations going on considering everything. And I just said, we got to get this thing down to where it's something that we can live with, and we do what we have to do. You have to have an energy policy in this country that works. And I really got upset when I saw that our country was looking at different countries around the world to do what we would do for ourselves. And especially when somebody was talking about Venezuela, then Iran, then over in Saudi Arabia, and on and on and on. And we have our best trading partners, Canada, with 62% of our imported oil comes from them. And we stopped, the XL pipeline was something we could have used. And so we need to build these relationships and the trust we have with our North American allies, and also with our trusted partners around, relied upon nations such as Australia and our allies overseas. So when all this was going on, the prices, and they were just talking, well, how about this? How about this? How about, we looked at everything. And then the inflation went from 6 to 8.1, then to 9.1. And that was the Thursday, went to 9.1. And we've been talking in good faith and having good talks and considerations, but there was nothing final, but the prices were higher, okay? In a perfect world, maybe you could look at some of that stuff. When that 9.1 came in, I just can't do it. Nope. I said, and then that's when Chuck got upset. He said, well, will you at least, will you at least do this, which is basically the Medicare pricing, reduction and let them negotiate. And I said, Chuck, we could have done that 6 months ago. We can do it tonight. We can do it tomorrow. Sure, I'm for that. Count me in. Well, that's when they turned the dogs loose that night, saying I was against all this stuff. I walked away. I didn't walk away. I just told them I can't do what we've been doing at that level or even thinking about discussing. There's no use to even further discuss at that level. So things, how our tempers get a little bit ahead of us at times. And by Monday, we passed each other and said something. Hi, how you doing? You still upset and this and that? And I said, I haven't walked away. I said, this is ridiculous. I said, we can recalibrate and see if there's something can be done. And to his credit, he says, okay. And he put his staff back with our staff, and we started talking and told him what we thought could work, what we thought we could support, and what we would do, and how we got it to the price we did at $7.39. So people say, why didn't you wait for the inflation figures? Because I know I'm not adding to inflation. I'm not adding unless there's companies that weren't paying anything at all, and you believe it's fair to let them not pay. And they're saying they're going to do this and that and retaliate because now they got to pay a minimum of 15. That's the only thing I can see, Manu. And I don't understand that, how they could have the benefit of this great country and not pay.
How do you know, Senator? Who told you that you're not adding to inflation? I mean, was this a Larry Summers discussion? Was there some analysis? Did the White House tell you that?
I've had discussions with people that we've been trusted on, the same people that work with me on saying inflation. Trust me, Joe, inflation will not be transitory. This thing is going to blow up wide. This long. And we said that, what, a year ago? Before everybody made fun of me, and they said, we have 17 Nobel laureates that say it's going to be transitory. And I said, I believe those 17 Nobel laureates are telling you what you want to hear. This is not going to be transitory. Okay. So I went against that grain by the same people who've been advising me all along. And it's been a cross section of really, really some good intended people, well intended and not self-serving.
All right, thank you, Manu. Next, we'll go to Mike Toney with the Charleston Gazette-Mail.
Hi, Senator. First of all, glad you're on the mend and hope you keep feeling better. I just wanted to ask if you could specify what pipeline or transmission permitting reforms you're prioritizing for passage in the fall, and how the Mountain Valley pipeline figures into that.
Well, I would like to think that Mountain Valley would be the top of the heap because it's ready to, it's complete. It can be in production in 6 months and put 2 billion BCF, 2 billion cubic feet a day into the system, which is badly needed in order to help ourselves and help our allies who are in desperate need right now with LNG. So that's one. Any of that we have across the country that are ready to be in production should be. And we're hoping that that'll accelerate that. Also, with the permitting reforms, Mike, they're not going, we have a hard time building some new transmission lines that will be built probably in the Midwest or out west, where large wind farms, solar farms, and all that's going to be needed to carry that into the marketplace. So these are all things that we need to have permitting reform to make sure that we have a really vibrant energy reliance that we have now, and using our fossil cleaner than anywhere else in the world. We put incentives for the carbon captures and all the new technology that would help that happen. And also major investment went into the new technologies, whether it be solar, small nuclear reactors, or hydrogen. Hydrogen is going to be a big one here because we believe that's a good transition. It's a good clean fuel that we're able to go to, and it's going to help our state and many other states.
What specific reforms with regard to Mountain Valley Pipeline, since that's at the top of the heap in terms of your priorities, what specific reforms would get that going?
Well, I think there'll be contents of that coming out, and you should basically see that because they really work very hard on permitting reforms for us to be able to do our permit and evaluations and have conclusions done within a 2-year period, not the 10-year periods taken now. So we looked at other countries around the world who are developed nations do it extremely well, and they do it in a very short period of time. We should be able to do the same.
You see the big issues being on FERC's end of things, or?
Well, FERC is all, it's the whole, it's basically all the hoops that we make people, maybe duplicate hoops that have to follow through. Just looking at how we can make sure that we're still protecting the environment and also have a pathway forward. If it's not going to work, don't you think you should know before you're taken down and you invest billions of dollars and then get stopped at the end. I think that doesn't fare well for America. It hasn't fared well for us having secured energy policy. And we have to go around the world asking other people to do what we should be able to do for ourselves. Does not basically identify the superpower of the world being able to take care of itself and help its allies. So I think this is geopolitical. It's many things, but we think we can walk and chew gum and have a balanced approach and have the new investments and the new clean technologies we need for the future. So we think we've kind of covered it all, hopefully.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Next, we'll go to Kelly Ferris with Fox News.
Thanks, Senator. Glad you're feeling better. My question is about kind of the repercussions of announcing this deal. You mentioned that you think Republicans are now holding the PACT Act hostage after that vote, the procedural vote failed last night. My question is, there's been a lot of negotiations around the gay marriage Equality Act, and Kyrsten Sinema and others have been trying to get 10 Republicans on board to vote for that. There's some Democrats saying now that they're worried that announcing this deal last night is going to blow up those negotiations. What do you say to your Democratic colleagues about why you announced this deal last night, despite it possibly jeopardizing other negotiations, and also to Republicans who might be on the fence about voting for things now that this Dems only reconciliation bill is moving forward?
Well, first of all, there was no malice intended whatsoever. I just know the timing. If we're going to do something before we go to the August 6th break and have it washed and have it at the bird bath and have the parliamentarian go through all the things that she has to, we had a bill that was almost completed. We were able to get it completed by Wednesday. So because of Wednesday, that means that we can go into reconciliation by next Wednesday and be done before we leave on the 6th. And if that could be done, we should do it. If it couldn't be done, then that's fine. Well, it came to fruition to where once we had negotiations and agreements that we could move forward, and our staff worked diligently across the board and around the clock, everybody was, it was kept very quiet because I wasn't sure it was ever going to come to fruition. I wanted to make sure that we had a robust energy and a reform of our permitting process, which has been hindering us to being able to produce the energy we need to be self-reliant. And once everyone came to an agreement, okay, we agree with you, we started working in a way that was able to find the pathway. And that's, sometimes it opens up and sometimes it doesn't. I think you've been around long enough to know it's fallen apart as many times as it's come together. And it wasn't intended to hurt or help. It was intended, basically, the timing would work out. The timing worked out. If we could come to that agreement on Wednesday, then we could go into and let the parliamentarian do what she has to do for a full week or more, and then come back and get it done before we leave on the 6th. That was not sure.
Are you worried about it jeopardizing those negotiations, though?
Well, it should. That's what I worry about, is that we become so dysfunctional. I mean this sincerely. My Republican friends, these are all so good people, and they're good friends of mine. But to get wrapped up in thinking, well, we've got to be against something because it might make the other side look good. And for the Democrats, they've done the same thing. Okay, so I'm not siding with either side. I think they're both immature when it comes to that. We should be looking at what's good for the country. This is a piece of legislation. It's historical. We're paying down debt. We didn't raise taxes on anybody. All we did was say, can't you at least pay your 15%? Well, you and I would have thought everybody was paying at least 21%. So when we got to an agreement, we said, then let's go. And I'm hoping that my Republican friends will look at this bill and if they'll just take time to look at the bill and look at the contents of this bill and how it was presented and what's really in it. It's going to have to be all politics to drive you to be opposed to it, because there shouldn't be things that you've wanted. And I've worked with you on, especially on permitting reforms that is most needed in our country. And you could not be supportive of it. I would hope they would look at it with clear lenses.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Next, we'll go to Alexa Bayer with Mountain State Spotlight.
Hi, Senator. My question's also about Mountain Valley Pipeline. I imagine when you say there are projects that are basically good to go, you're thinking of Mountain Valley Pipeline, which is about 95% complete. That said, the reason the rest hasn't been completed is because they're mired in permitting issues with the Army Corps of Engineers, with the U.S. Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife. And the Fourth Circuit has ruled that these agencies were acting unlawfully by permitting them originally. And so I just want to press you a bit on how these easements to pipeline permitting are going to affect these agencies specifically in their capacity to approve Mountain Valley Pipeline and other pipelines. What's that going to look like? And also, will this move the Mountain Valley Pipeline litigation from the Fourth Circuit to the DC Circuit, as you previously said, voiced your support for?
Well, I'm not going to speak on the specifics. The bottom line is permit reform's been on the board for a long time. There's been bipartisan support for permitting reform for a long, long time. And we finally brought it to fruition. So this is something that the United States of America should be able to do without getting bogged down in litigation after litigation after litigation, and be able to move the things that are necessary for us to defend ourselves as nation and be in defense of our nation, be able to defend ourselves and help our allies who are in a war, and energy has been made part of that war. It's what caused that war, and that's what they're using as a tool against us. So we have to be able to defend ourselves, help our allies, and be able to do what we need. And that's what we're going to be able to do.
But you're not going to say what you're going to do to the agencies, or if it's going to
No, I think basically you have to read the contents of the bill and see that. There's time for you. We'll have all that coming out. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. Now we're going to our last question, and for a reminder to all the media, we will be sending the recording of this out to everyone once we conclude. So we'll be emailing that out shortly. But our last question is for Emily Cochran with the New York Times.
Hi, Senator. Thank you for doing this. I'm also in COVID quarantine right now, so I'm sorry for my voice.
Well, I'm sorry that you're having the same thing I'm having. I hope you're feeling better. How long are you in? How long do you have?
We tested positive on the same day. So
Monday?
Yep. So I hope you feel
Hey, tell your I saw your New York Times article about a reversal.
Yes.
The only thing about reverse, you go backwards. I've never reversed anything in my life. I don't know why they won't print the facts. So if you could tell some of your people who wrote that article, I'd respect it if they would just print the facts.
Duly noted, sir. And we always, that's what we always strive for.
I know, but the article is very misleading. I mean, the headlines is very misleading.
I wanted to clarify, when did you strike the deal with Senator Schumer? When did the two of you say, pens down, this is it, this is what the Inflation Reduction Act is going to look like? And then secondly, can you just talk about the decision to extend the ACA subsidies to 2025? Because I know you've had concerns about, making sure things are extended for the full duration of the bill.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't think inflation is going to go away anytime soon. Okay, I'm just hoping that we can relieve it and get people relief. And right now, it's crippling. It's really crippling. And to throw these higher prices on people, and there's a lot of small businesses that are affected by the ACA extension. So it was brought to my attention. We looked at it very diligently, and we felt a period of time of what it would take to get back to normal is going to be in the 25, 26 area. And that's how we got to 25. On the other thing is basically by Tuesday evening, it looked like we were able to come. I'm just trying to think. I'll make sure I'm accurate on the time as best I can. By Wednesday morning, our people have been working around the clock for a long time. People, and I just never gave up. I just thought, I'm concerned that we don't have energy security in our country. Our adversaries, especially Russia, is using it against us. Xi Jinping is watching us, knowing that he has a noose around our neck with critical minerals. And here we are going down the path of where we need batteries, and we want to go to this new EV, all these EVs. And he knows that we can't produce it ourselves because he captured that market. And I'm just thinking, that's not who we are as a country. We got to do something. We really got to do something bold here. And we've got to fight back, and we've got to have a robust fossil energy that does it better than anywhere in the world until we transition with the new technology, and that'll happen. So you have to invest robustly in that also. So by Tuesday night, everyone, there wasn't that many of us, but those of us who might have had some disagreements, and we're finally come to agreement, it's got to be a balanced approach. And pretty much we had the text pretty much lined up in that arena. And That's why the text was finished on Wednesday. So Wednesday morning was confirmed that it was a go. The text was almost just being wrapped up to make sure we got it to you all by Wednesday night. And Wednesday was the deadline because we wouldn't get out of here on the 6th without it, and we wanted to get it done by then because, as you know, chaos will break loose no matter when. It already has. It's just a shame that the politics on both sides, Democrat, Republican sides, are looking that if you do something good, and I'm a Democrat and you're Republican, I've got to be absolutely against it. And that's just not who I am. I do not, if you do something good, I'm going to help you do something good because I think it's good for me too. It's good for my country. And it's just a shame that we have gotten so split and so divided when you can do good things like this. And then in normal, rational times, this would have been a bipartisan bill. Okay? It really would have.
All right. Thank you, Emily. And thank you, everyone. Again, we'll send this recording around shortly.
Thank you all. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Marcus, for a good job.
Thank you.